The 2025 KBO season is underway. We'll tell you who's hot, we'll tell you who is off to a slow start, and give you some games to look out for as the month of March comes to an end. And already after 2 races in the Formula One season, we might have a shuffling at one of the biggest teams on the grid. We'll see if Liam Lawson might have raced his last for Red Bull in 2025. And a contract circus at one of the biggest football teams in Europe has caused a respected journalist to step in and set the record straight in advance of a huge title chase, because the month of May is rapidly approaching in world football. We'll cover all this and more on this week's edition of the International Sports Report. Very warm greeting to you wherever you are in the world. My name is Marshall Lamert. I am host number 1 of the International Sports Report and the curator of this channel that you're watching this YouTube video on right now. My normal co-host, Matthew Giesecke, is going to be back next week, but he's got some big life-altering stuff happening, and I'm very, very excited for him. So, tricky schedule this week, but we'll be hearing MG's perspectives when he comes back on the show next Wednesday. But we roll on. Before we do, though, a couple of housekeeping items before we get to today's top stories. Number 1, there will be an audio version of this podcast incoming in the coming weeks. We're working on getting that hooked up on Transistor so that you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you choose to consume your podcast. You should listen to the audio version of the video International Sports Report. So that will be coming in the coming weeks. We will also be working on bringing you some live play-by-play commentary of not just sporting events, baseball, football, but also races in Formula One on twitch.tv. So keep it tuned to this space for that. Lots of exciting stuff to look forward to on the International Sports Report. And finally, we have the full documentary, the swan song of the Global Baseball Network, The Tale of the King, Ono Monogatari, in all 5 parts, will be put together for a feature-length presentation uploaded here onto the International Sports Report for your viewing pleasure. So that will also be coming in the coming weeks. But without much further ado, let's get right into it. Our top stories of the week so far for this week, March the 26th of 2025. 2 races have not really gone Red Bull's way up to this point in the year, and rumors are starting to swirl around Liam Lawson's departure from the second seat at Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen. Many names getting tossed around. I mean, obviously the big one was Yuki Tsunoda, who many thought would have the best chance of replacing Checo Perez at the start of the year, but that really hasn't panned out. Obviously, Yuki's been down with the second team, shall we say, of Red Bull, Racing Bulls, and he's honestly had a really great start to his campaign. I would not be surprised if this switch is made, and apparently neither would a lot of people in the sports journalism sphere. Rumors starting to swirl, especially after a big comment from Helmut Marko, the director of Red Bull. Marko said after the Chinese Grand Prix disappointment that we will discuss it calmly. We still have a few drivers among the junior academy who can recommend themselves. Lawson is yet to make it out of Q1. this season. He has had a really, really rough start to his first full one as a Formula One driver. So we will see, especially we're recording this on Wednesday in advance of the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka. We will see if something changes in between now and then. And if it does, we'll certainly be talking about it on next week's show. As we go to the world of football, international break action in the world of football. Just friendlies, matches of no consequence, so we're not going to be digging into the scores and standings like we normally would when we're talking about the big leagues in the world of football, but there is plenty of news to report upon. Chief amongst them is, it seems to be, an agreement in place, details not yet released, between Trent Alexander-Arnold, a fullback at Liverpool, and one of the biggest clubs in the world in Real Madrid. And that's not to say Liverpool isn't one of the biggest clubs in the world in their own right, but they are in the midst of a title defense right now under the reign of their new, and I think it's fair to say at this point, controversial manager in Arne Slot. Fans seem to really like him, I think due to the results, at least some of the results anyway, after Liverpool's Champions League unceremonious exit at the hands of Paris Saint-Germain. Alexander-Arnold has been one of three players that is involved in this, you heard me talk about it in the open, the contract circus. All three of these players, contracts out at the end of the season. Trent Alexander-Arnold is one, Mohamed Salah is the other, and Virgil van Dijk, the captain, is the third. So, with the Alexander-Arnold deal rumored to be agreed upon, naturally, with rumors swirling around all three, a lot of details coming out about Virgil van Dijk's possible preferences to a move abroad. But that has prompted a very interesting response from one of the most respected voices in the business, and you can find him right here on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to link his channel in the description. If you do not know his name already, you should, especially as we get closer to the summer months. Fabrizio Romano, probably the most reliable voice when it comes to football transfers, stepping in and making a comment on his YouTube channel regarding the Van Dijk contract situation. He has basically said that the links linking Van Dijk to moves not just to PSG, that was the big one, but also to some clubs in Saudi Arabia are complete and utter bogus. No word whatsoever that he's looking at a move away. And this seemingly lends credence to the big center back's comments earlier this season, and he said that before the end of this season, you will have some news. Which, at least in my book, and sound off on this in the comments, of course, maybe you agree with me, disagree with me, let me know for sure. But it sounds like to me that this means Van Dijk will be staying put. And trust me on this, as a Liverpool fan, that is music to my ears. But unfortunately, the fan base will be waiting with bated breath. Finally, and segueing perfectly into the first league under the microscope this week, KBO in action. First of the major baseball leagues to commence their season. This happened last Friday. Around the same time, we uploaded our first ever episode of the International Sports Report here on ISN. NPB, CBPL, and of course MLB all kicking off this week. And now, without much further ado, let's dig into the scores as of March the 26th of 2025. 9-2 defending champs over the NC Dinos on Saturday. Hanwha beats KT 4-3. Samsung 13-5 over Kiwoom. SSG beats Doosan 6-5 in a very big game. LG blows out the Lotte Giants 12-2. Sunday, Lions win again, 11-7 over the Heroes. Landers win the series, 5-2 over Doosan. KT responds with a 5-4 victory over Hanwha. Twins beat the Giants again, 10-2. And then the Dinos get one back on the Tigers, 5-4. Action yesterday, KT beats Doosan 8-3. Kia over Kiwoom 11-6. Lotte 3, SSG 2. Lions 14, Dinos 5, LG 5, and Hanwha nothing. And then finally, 3-1 Lotte loses to SSG. Twins dominate again, 4-0 over the Eagles. 17-10, Kiwoom fires back, and they dominate the defending champs, the Kia Tigers, in that one. 8-6 NC over Samsung, and Doosan over KT, 3-2. And that brings us to the standings as of March the 26th of 2025. LG, the only team not to lose a game in the opening slate. 3-1 are the Samsung Lions and SSG Landers. Kia Tigers 2-2, KT Wiz 2-2, and the NC Dinos 2-2, and the remaining teams 1-3. Underwhelming as the KBO season kicks off. I mean, we predicted that the Lions were going to be off to a great start, but I didn't really think that the offense was going to be as big a star as it was compared to the stellar pitching staff. We talked about that on last week's show as we were previewing the KBO, and we think also we kind of thought that the Twins were going to dominate a mediocre team like the Giants. I hope for the best for them, and hopefully a lot of their fans did too, but a disappointing start to the slate for one of KBO's oldest outfits. Really good series between the Dinos and Tigers going back and forth. That was a fun one, and then the Landers doing very well against a pretty good Doosan Bears team. We're going to tell you about the games of the week to watch out for just ahead. But we need to dig in to the Chinese Grand Prix. The biggest story out of the weekend, apart from the one we mentioned at the top of the show, Lawson's possible departure from Red Bull, was the monumental double disqualification disaster that has befallen Scuderia Ferrari. Both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc have their cars found to be underweight, and it's not to say that they're really losing much, kind of a la George Russell at the Belgian Grand Prix last year, because they both did not have great finishes. They finished in points, did both Ferraris, but you know what? Hats off to Charles Leclerc for driving with a messed up front wing like that almost the whole way. Well done to him. It was a great drive, but obviously he wasn't really going to be equipped to make a whole lot of noise after that. And then Pierre Gasly also getting disqualified for the same reason as the three Ferraris. And I mean, I'm not going to get mad at the FIA because it doesn't really seem like anyone else has, because everyone seems to think that they got this one right, including Ferrari themselves. They just said, we messed up, we're sorry. So despite it being a big story, it's kind of a nothing burger. We just kind of needed to say that it happened and we will move on. But I mean, the narrative tracking Ferrari earlier on in the season is not a good one. Up to this point in time, they are going to need a really good result in Suzuka to really turn public opinion around, especially amongst the Tifosi. Whereas one of the other top teams, in my opinion, the best team in the field, getting the dominant 1-2 that we all thought might happen if the weather had cooperated in Melbourne. McLaren going 1-2. Oscar Piastri getting his first win in 2025. Lando Norris close behind. So the two of them have traded first place spots, on top of the podium. And not really much to say other than it's a great machine. They're all seem to be working together as a team. I love the culture that Zach Brown has created in the paddock, and it seems like they are going to be on their way to something special this year if they continue to hold off Max Verstappen, who had a great drive in his Red Bull, but a bad start, and that kept him back. A very rare sight to see a bad start from Max Verstappen. But I think it's fair to say, and this is my perspective that I'm going to add on the Lawson situation. I don't really think he's that bad. Am I crazy? I don't really think I'm that crazy. I think that Lawson is being scapegoated by the powers that be at Red Bull, i.e. Marco, i.e. Christian Horner, all these guys, to mask the fact that with Adrian Newey gone, he's headed to Aston Martin in 2026. They have made a real stinker of an automobile that has, I think, already cost Verstappen some points. Especially, like, if he had something that had a little bit more zip in it, kind of a la last year, I mean, I think we would have been talking about a very difficult result. A difficult result, to be sure, but a different one in Shanghai. But shoulda, woulda, coulda. We'll see if maybe they do bring in a new driver for that second seat. If Yuki Tsunoda gets his hands on that machine, if he can get something out of it. I mean, it's taking everything that Max's powers have to offer to try to find something in that machine. So credit to him, honestly. I mean, he's one of the greats for a reason, and he's squeezing the life out of that Red Bull right now to make sure that he gets points. Hats off to the dynamic teenager Kimi Antonelli, and honestly to Ollie Behrman. The pair of them have both been driving out of their skulls in these first two races. Antonelli in particular, first two races in Formula One and you're in the points, well done to you, son. Bravo, and I think that Toto Wolff having faith in that young man has so far been completely and utterly vindicated. We're talking about these points. Let's tell you how much that they have as we go to the Formula One standings after the Chinese Grand Prix. Lando Norris remains in front, first and second place finishes for him. Verstappen in second place with 36. George Russell completes the top three. Oscar Piastri close behind, though, by just 1 point. And then, in the Drivers' Championship, Kimi Antonelli. He's 12 points behind George Russell, but he is in 5th place. This Mercedes might be a sneaky good machine. Good drives from both Russell and Antonelli at this point. Yes, they've been right place, right time for some of the other teams having trouble, but I don't think we can write them off, and I think a lot of people, myself included, maybe did to start this year. Suzuka will be very telling indeed. Also, what's Lance Stroll doing in the top 10? Well done to him for having the great drives that he has had. In the top 10 as well is Alex Albon in that Williams. Carlos Sainz is just really having all sorts of trouble trying to get something out of that machine, but he apparently is the only one out of that team. Yuki Tsunoda down there at 13th, but I think this is a story that is not told by the numbers. He's going to be a lot better in Suzuka, and then the last 5 on the board yet to record any points at all, because a lot of them have at least one DNF of the 2 races that we've had this year. So, looking ahead to Suzuka, we will see who comes out on top. I think if you want to bet, if you're a betting person, bet on McLaren, but, you know, this is something that I think we're going to tackle on the show a little bit later on in the year, is maybe enjoy sport for the love of the game and skip the gambling for a change. But anyway, we'll see what happens. I know MG's got some thoughts on that. I certainly do, especially working in college sports. But Suzuka ahead, and so without further ado, we mentioned top of the show, international break action in the world of football, so we haven't really been able to dig in to some fascinating results, but we have quite a few of them for you to look forward to as we roll into the weekend. Let's roll the games of the week for March the 26th of 2025. We start in England, and we have the Merseyside Derby. What a controversial the first iteration of this match was. Wednesday, April the 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These Reds are out by a country mile in front of the Premier League table, but they are under pressure. And this is going to be probably their biggest match back after the Champions League knockout. How will they respond in a match against a very contentious rival? Saw quite a few red cards flying earlier on in the season. Will we see a repeat of that? Speaking of rivals, probably the biggest game of the year in the Netherlands in the Eredivisie. PSV Eindhoven takes on Ajax. It's a battle of 2 versus 1. Ajax is top of the table by just 6 points, but this time they will be at home at the Johan Cruyff Arena, and if you want to watch along, the match will be on ESPN Plus this Sunday, March the 30th at 8:30 a.m. Turning to Italy. Good battle between 3 and 8. 3 Atalanta versus 8 Fiorentina. This Sunday at 9 a.m. if you're interested in watching along. Every single win important for the top team in Inter Milan, but should they stumble, this is a game that Atalanta cannot afford to get away from, especially with a scrappy Fiorentina outfit. Finally, turning to Germany, our pick, Leverkusen versus Bochum. On paper, a foregone conclusion for Xabi Alonso's outfit. This one on Friday March the 28th, just in 2 days' time at 3:30 p.m. also on ESPN+. 6 points between Leverkusen and Bayern Munich. Every single point matters. Xabi Alonso needs to work hard to try to keep up with this Bayern team, and getting wins like this is a good way to do it. Plus, this is a fun team to watch. Might be Florian Wirtz's last year with Leverkusen. So we will see what happens. And then, of course, we turn to the world of baseball. First up in NPB, a potential playoff preview as your opening day series between the Hiroshima Carp and Hanshin Tigers. This is going to be a fun 1-3 game series starting Friday. And then also starting Friday, a potential playoff preview in the two best teams in Taiwan, the Lions and the Brothers. Intriguing to see, but if the Guardians carry on their excellent preseason form, and it really is excellent, I'll make sure I link the standings for the CBPL after spring training in the description, we might be in for a little bit of a table shakeup. But it's the grand rivalry in Taiwan for a reason. Lions versus Brothers getting it started opening day weekend in Taiwan. Lastly, in KBO, starting this weekend, the weekend series LGNC. Good back and forth series between the Dinos and Tigers to start the year, so we will see how they do against the undefeated Twins. But those are the games that we're going to advise you here on ISN to look forward to as we roll into what will be a fascinating and fun sports watching weekend. Happy opening day to you around the world, no matter what league you support. And that brings our time together to an end. On next week's show, we'll look back at the opening week of series in NPB and CBPL. Check back in with the KBO, of course, and then we will be in full force for the title push in the world of football in England, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands. Some title races par excellence that we will be tracking religiously here on this show. MG is going to be back, of course, with a possible hockey update. World Hockey might be making its debut here on this channel. It should be a very fun one, and he's excited to share what he's got with you. Also, just a hearty congratulations to my partner on getting married. I'm not sure if I'm gonna leave this in the video, but I'm very, very happy for him. And this is gonna be a very fun weekend for him to celebrate. So if you do feel compelled, make sure you leave some well wishes in the comments down below, because he's done a marvelous job in helping get this thing off the ground. And so my warmest wishes to him and his fiance. So with that, that brings episode number 2 of ISR, the International Sports Report, for the week of March the 26th, 2025 to an end. Please do like and share this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon down below the video screen to be notified every single time a new episode of this show is aired, or many, many other fun uploads that we have planned to be sprinkled in these episodes as the season wears on. Don't miss a minute here on ISN. I speak for Matt. We love what we do here on ISN, and we can't wait to share with you what else we've got planned. Thank you very much for watching 2 episodes into this series, and hopefully we will have many, many more to come. So thank you very much for watching. We will see you in the next one, but for now, that's the game.